Good morning, everyone. My name's Mark Flynn. It's great to see such an excellent turnout for our Microsoft Teams webinar. Let me start by introducing Matt Blackwell from Microsoft, who will be taking us through the key features in Microsoft Teams. Matt, do you just want to say a quick hi?
Yep. Morning, everyone. Thanks, Mark. So briefly introduce myself. Matt Blackwell. I'm a Senior Business Development Manager on the Microsoft SureStep team. Good to see you all this morning.
Matt, thanks for that. So for any question, a little bit of housekeeping, for any questions you might have, please post them in the Q&A in the top right-hand side of the screen. Hopefully put that point at the right-hand side of the screen. But at the top of the screen, you'll see a couple of buttons. One of those will be Q&A. And I'll make sure we'll address as many as we can today in the 30 minutes we have allotted, but most definitely follow up on others on email. Now, it'd be wrong of me not to say a few words about Bedroq, so let me say just a few words. Yes, we provide a full range of outsourced IT services, but we work on the premise that if you don't measure it, you can't manage it. So our USP is to ensure your IT strategy is aligned to your business. For example, providing the dashboards that tell you how the business of IT is supporting the business, be that measuring the effectiveness of your IT spend, the security of your business, or the productivity of your people. Take, for example, the productivity of your people. Let's drill down a little bit on that. So identifying, for example, where the hotspots of Teams usages, which teams are using video most. So you can start asking what value are they getting from Teams and what changes you should be making. Let's move on to the next slide and look at 3 of our customers and the journeys they're on. In each case, COVID-19 is accelerating their business transformation. For example, one of our clients has decided to close the London office and handing back the keys to the landlord, and everyone is going to work from home beyond just this initial lockdown that they're experiencing. Another, a very traditional international recruitment firm, has always conducted their business face-to-face, but now sees the value of video interviewing. But how do they ensure they still portray their business as a high-end organization? Finally, an international sales and marketing business is switching from email as their main comms tool to Teams, where they'll only use email for more formal written communication to clients and partners, similarly to how the written letter has evolved over the last 30 years. Now, in all of these cases, it all leads back to Microsoft Teams because the core communication collaboration tool, it's becoming the core communication collaboration tool. And what we want to share with you today are some of the top tips to make your transformation and your productivity a success. Matt, over to you.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you to the team at Bedroq for allowing me on today to talk through Teams. So I'll quickly just share my screen. So the first thing I wanted to kind of do is to just talk through, what we've kind of seen in terms of Teams usage since COVID has hit, really. We realise that remote working is ever more present in the current climate, and we really want to make sure that anybody that is actively using Teams or thinking about using Teams is as supported as possible and are able to kind of set up Teams for their organisation. So what we will do today is we will take you through some, as Marcus said, some top tips around using Teams, some best practice, and I really want to drill down on things like how to use a live event for your organisation, how to actually work on documents more collaboratively and co-author them, again, to boost that productivity. But I did say that I was going to take you through kind of a little bit around the landscape that we find ourselves in at the moment. So to give you an idea of kind of Teams usage since COVID-19 hit, we had anywhere between 30 to 35 million active daily users. That's quite quickly shot up to around 75 million in a very short space of time. And Microsoft are continuously investing in more data center space and more capacity to be able to manage that. More interestingly, video usage has actually gone from anywhere between 3 and 6% on average to actually over 90%, which again just kind of elevates that need for that face-to-face personal approach. So kind of just to frame that a little bit. Now, what I wanted to start off by taking people through is we get continuously asked about Teams data storage. Where does data and files actually back up to? So I wanted to start just by illustrating this to everybody on the webinar today. So as an example, if we were to share a file through Teams, that would be backed up to SharePoint if that was being worked on collaboratively and being able to access through SharePoint. If I was to share, for example, a link to a file or to a one-on-one basis, that will be backed up to OneDrive. Equally, when we start to look at the recording of meetings, such as this one today, anything that is shared via recording will actually be backed up to Stream. So I kind of wanted to just frame that initially, because I say we get a lot of questions being asked about data storage and kind of general data residency within Teams. So let's kind of dive in to actually using Teams, and I will be using a demo environment today to take you through really the 6 areas that underpins Teams. Now, those 6 areas are your activity, your chat, your Teams itself, the calendar or meeting function, calls, and files. So let's kind of start off within the activity tab. So the activity tab really, what it's there to be used for is a bit of a catch up and a summary of the day. So what you'll see in here, for example, would be any functions, which I'll talk about shortly in the chat function. But if anybody was to specifically mention you within a discussion, within a thread, within a Teams chat, that will actually appear on the left-hand side here. So you might want to look at that as a bit of a, are there any specific actions from me? Equally, you will see any missed calls that you may have had through Teams, and you will see any new threads that have been started as part of the Teams chats. And again, we'll go into that. So really, we see a lot of users will actually use this activity tab as a bit of a summary of the day, or equally, if you've been off on annual leave for a couple of weeks and you really don't want to spend your time going back through all of the chat and all of the actions, really, all of this is summarized on your left-hand side feed. It's very similar to something you may see around Facebook, for example, where specific actions, or if you've been mentioned in a particular thread, same sort of vein and same sort of UI and UX that's employed within here. So when we move on to the chat functionality within Teams, this is probably what 99.9% of users of Teams will actually use and know it for, that instant messaging functionality. Now, you have the ability to interact with somebody on a one-on-one basis. For example, here I'm speaking to Alex. What you also have the ability to do is to actually create a chat on multiples. And I'll talk to you a little bit around why you would use chat over Teams and vice versa. But as an example, if I use the function here, as we see, that will display everybody within your organization and everybody that is within your Teams tenant. So as an example, with somebody, at Microsoft, where we have tens of thousands of people, it's very good to be able to quickly look up people. But if I wanted to start a group chat with, say, Saya and let's say Johnny, then what you can actually do is you can name that group chat. So this is very good for kind of that very instant message, not necessarily project-based discussions, but you have the ability to add in as many people as you want into that group. But again, very much for a just ad hoc discussion as opposed to anything around, say, project management. What you also have the ability to do along the bottom here is to start to look at some of the add-ins and functions within chat. So you can do things like flagging a particular message as high importance. So what a lot of people will do is they will tag a specific person and they will also flag that message as high importance, so that anybody seeing that will know, okay, there's a specific action or there's something that I really need to start to look at here. Equally, you have the ability to attach files, which we'll talk in a little bit more detail shortly. But when you start to look at the personability of Teams, and actually I myself, as the advert states, I live on Teams at the moment, so you want to inject a little bit of personability into these discussions. You have the ability to add in emojis, for example. You have the ability to add in GIFs as well. I'm yet to find a situation in life that there isn't a suitable GIF for, but again, it kind of adds to that personability within Teams. Equally, you can add stickers, and you can actually schedule a meeting with everybody that's in this specific chat as well. Also, when you start to look at if you're going to use Teams within your organization, what you might want to do in, say, a group chat is to give somebody praise, for example. So you can actually send praise through here for, a good work on a piece of project, for going the extra mile. Again, it just adds to that full collaboration piece within the business. What you also have the ability to do is to add in any external apps. Now, this is really key because a lot of people that use Teams on a daily basis don't necessarily realize that there is a functionality to add in external apps. Now, a lot of users of Teams will think that it's only the Microsoft approved apps, such as something like Forms or Planner. Actually not true. There is a huge amount, an array of external apps that you can actually add into Teams. So I'll pick out a few here, for example, something like Trello, something like Jira, if you use that a lot through project management type approaches. There is actually the ability to add in Lucidchart in here. So again, I've used Lucidchart a lot myself. There is a huge amount, and they're actually segmented by type as well on the left-hand side. So it's really, really important that anybody that's using Teams has the full functionality of adding in an external apps or any other project management tools or collaboration tools that they're actually using in their day-to-day business, so that you're actually using Teams in its fullest, rather than just being kind of siloed to the Microsoft specific apps. Now, the one thing to note when it comes to the Teams chat function is, unlike let's say anybody that's used Skype for Business before, Teams actually employs a persistent chat function. So whereas previously with Skype, if you were to have a full conversation with somebody, you then close that down, you would have to go back through the history of Skype to actually see where that conversation got up to. With Teams, if I was to have a huge chat on here, doesn't matter how big that conversation is, if I close that down, when I open it back up, that chat begins as if nothing ever changed. So I could go away from my annual leave and I could pick that chat up immediately where I left off. So just to kind of note that for a lot of Skype for Business users. What you also have the ability within here to do, you've got the two buttons up here, which have the audio and the voice call. So if I wanted to quickly call Isaiah and Johnny, then I can call them through a video call or through an audio call. And I'll talk a little bit around the calling capabilities shortly. So that's that kind of chat instant messenger functionality. When we move on to Teams as itself, this is probably the most underutilized tool within Teams itself. So really what Teams is used for is if, for example, you are going to be setting up a project with external users, then you have the ability to set up a specific project management group within Teams. And I talked a little bit around best practice before. So I see a lot of users of Teams who will have 100, 200 separate chats with one or two people within each. In actual fact, best practice would be to set up a Teams group for each area of your business function. So you could have a retail, you could have a finance team, sales and marketing, and you can then actually have sub channels underneath those. So within sales and marketing, you can have a general group, or you might want to have a group around monthly reports. So this is where Teams really comes into its own. You can also divide teams. So you can either favorite or you can hide a team. So if I wanted to add and pin that general channel, I can have that at the top so that I can constantly keep up to date with what is happening. General best practice is probably to have maybe 8 or 10 separate teams, put as many sub channels as you like underneath that. So you can have up to 99 teams, and you can actually have unlimited channels. I'm not sure anybody would use those as limited channels, but you can actually have unlimited. And actually the recent update includes up to 5,000 members in the same team. Now, in the same way as we did before, you can add in any external apps into a Teams area. What you can also do up here is to, for example, create a wiki page. So as an example as well, what you might want to do is you have a business that, say, has a Twitter support line, and it's a way for your customers to reach out to you with support issues, for example. Well, with these connectors at the top here, what you can actually add in is, say, your Twitter group, specifically your Twitter support page, so that any time anybody puts any comments on there, any activity happens, you actually get notified of that. So again, it's bringing in the various different functions that you have within your business into one repository. Now, conversations are also threaded within Teams as well. So whereas, for example, with Outlook, where you send an email, it's kind of quite fragmented and it can become convoluted very, very quickly. With Teams threads, you can actually see who is typing. So down here, anybody that's typing within the chat function, you'll be able to see who is typing. You'll also be able to track who has actually seen that message as well. So if it's, for example, up to 5 people within a group, you'll be able to see when everybody within that group has actually read that message. So again, when you start to look at things like project management, you can see who has seen something like a really crucial update. Now, one of the really good and amazing features within Teams, the Teams channel here, is the ability to do inline translation. So if you are working with not just kind of cross-country organizations, but actually throughout the world, you can actually switch on something called inline translation. So that person you are communicating with can type in their native language, whatever that may be, and you can actually switch on inline translation, so it will translate that message for you. So again, you can have those cross communications and cross-country communications. One thing to note is inline translation is not automatically enabled, so you might want to kind of look at some of the back-end functionality to make sure that that's set up for your business. So as we've said before, best practice really within Teams is have as many business functions as you need to have as an actual team, and then have those sub channels, and you can actually flag important messages, etc., and you can actually flag on any connectors on there as well. So let's move on to the kind of meetings and sort of scheduling function within here. So meetings are actually powered by artificial intelligence, that's specifically something like the scheduling assistant. So I'll take you through the scheduling assistant. Some of you may be familiar with that through Outlook, but if we were to book in a new meeting here through Teams, worth bearing in mind that Teams and your Outlook calendar will actually sync seamlessly. So whether you book in a Teams call or a Teams meeting through Outlook, or whether it's actually through Teams itself, the invite will appear in both. But let's say we wanted to book in a meeting and we wanted to add some attendees. We wanted to say add Johnny in here, and I want to also add in Alex, and I also want to add in Brian Johnson in here. Now, this is only relevant to people within your own organization or your own domain, but we've all had that instance where you have to go back saying, well, I'm free at 4, well, I'm only free at 5 o'clock, I'm only free at 3. By using the scheduling assistant, what you can actually do is it will sync to their Outlook, and it will actually look at when people are available so that you can actually capture people at the optimal time, rather than doing kind of the email yo-yo and the back and forth around who's available at what times. So if you've got a particularly big organization where you're maybe trying to book in something for 20, 30, 40 people, you're probably not going to grab them all when they're all available, but you can use the scheduling assistant to look at when is the optimal time to grab all of these people. And you can actually put in here for something like your work hours as well. So again, if you're working with somebody that works in, say, America, they can add in their work hours so that actually, rather than having everybody at 9 to 5, it might be that actually their working day starts at, say, 1 or 2 o'clock. So using that AI functionality within the scheduling assistant. Now, I did want to talk as well around the ability to actually start a live event. So massively underutilized resource when it comes to Teams is a live event. So this webinar now is a live event, and you would actually use a live event over, let's say, a normal call in the instance of, say, a company update. So if you're going to be running, say, a company update, if you're a CEO, you're an MD, and you potentially have 40, 50, 60 people on that call, what you don't want to do is to have the kind of control of people having their dishwashers in the background. We're in a very remote working environment at the moment, kids running around. A live event will actually allow people to jump into the webinar or into the event as the attendees have done today, not have to worry about people accidentally sharing their screen or speaking. And it's also best for optimizing your actual bandwidth as well. So if you have 40, 50, 60 people on a normal call, very quickly you can start to see potentially bandwidth starting to suffer a little bit, especially if everybody is using their cameras. So to set up a live event, very, very easy. You can only set up a live event through Teams, bearing in mind. So you couldn't go into Outlook and set up a live event. You can only schedule it through Teams. So let's say we want to set this up a meeting, and location will automatically be a Teams live event, unless you specifically want to put a meeting room in there if you've got that functionality. Now, best practice when it comes to setting up a live event is to have maybe 1 or 2 people as producers. Now, a producer has the ability to start or stop that live event. They have the ability to share their screen. What you can also do is you can change people to presenters. Presenters just have the ability, as Ron Seal would say, as it says on the tin, just to present their screens. So once you've done that, you then have some resources that you can enable. So you would have the ability to set this up as a public, i.e. anybody can attend. And there are some additional resources that you can actually see as well. So for example, you might want to enable something like a Q&A function, or you might want to see actually who out of my business has attended the monthly update, because I want to track that over time to see who is getting those key messages. I might want to have that recording available to the attendees. So there's a number of kind of different abilities that you have as a live event, but it's a massively underutilized tool when it comes to Teams. But best practice would be, if you're having something like a company-wide update, to use that functionality. Now, one thing to note when we start to look at things like calls, as a lot of you have probably seen by my funky background, Teams has enabled the ability to have custom backgrounds and also the ability to blur backgrounds as well. Now, although this is a lot of people will see this as a bit of a nice to have, when you start to look at things like if you have particularly sensitive information behind you, you might want to blur that background. I have to say it works very, very well. It frames my lovely face very well. But you have the ability to add in custom backgrounds, and it's in particular important for things like education as well. So if you are an education end user and you're actually using Teams for things like assignments or homework, you can put a classroom environment behind you to get users into that mindset. Equally, more recently within the calling functionality, Microsoft have implemented the 3x3 sharing screen. So if you have, say, up to 9 people with their cameras on, you can actually see up to 9 people. Coming very, very soon, probably within the next 6 months, is actually going to be 7x7 that Microsoft are working on as well. So you can actually have up to 49, if my maths are correct, people that you can actually see through Teams. But within the calling function here, you have the ability to make a call internally. So each person will have a number assigned to them through Teams, and you can actually call anybody directly within your own organization. Equally, you can check back through voicemail. So voicemail through Teams actually enables inline translation. So within here, what it will actually do is it will transcribe that voicemail that has been left. If it's in another language, it will actually translate that for you, and you have the ability to play that message back as well. So again, really what Teams is doing is enabling you to keep up to speed with what missed calls have I had from people. When did I last call that person? What's my history? And actually the contacts list is very good at being able to look up people very quickly. So again, if you've got a large organization, you actually have the ability to actually look them up very, very quickly and call them directly. Or, as we said before, using that chat function, if you have 10 people in a chat, you can just press one button, call all 10 of them immediately. Again, it's that time-saving element. And finally, what we'll touch on here is the file sharing and co-authoring of documents through Teams. This certainly for me has been an absolute lifesaver, because what it really does is it removes the need for, well, I'm working off version 10, well, I'm working off version 3, well, I had version 5 yesterday. What you're actually able to do through Teams is to co-author and collaborate on documents in real time. So let's take the returns Power App here, for example. If I want to work on this document, I have the ability to edit that in Teams, I have the ability to open that in a browser, or I have the ability to actually open it up in the desktop app on PowerPoint. So if we were to open this in the desktop app, you're probably not going to be able to see that now, but that will open that up just in a PowerPoint presentation. And what it will actually do is it will show you, if I open that actually up in Teams, it will actually show you who is in that document at the moment and what were the changes that have been made to that document since I was last in it. So within here, you have the full functionality of PowerPoint. I can make any changes that I want to. What it will also do is up on the top right here, it will show you who is currently in that document and more specifically, where are they in that document? So if I am on slide 4 and I want to make some amendments to it, actually I can see Lynn is already making amendments to that document. So we're all good. Again, file sharing, it removes that kind of need for version control. If you're working on something like a month-end report, very, very good. Now, it's really important that we note that obviously OneDrive and SharePoint would be the go-to and the standard kind of cloud storage when it comes to Teams. However, we understand that not everybody necessarily, a lot of people might be using Dropbox or something like Google Drive. All of those are fully integratable within Teams. So if you have something like Google Drive that you want to use as your preferred cloud storage, you can actually use that, and again, fully integrated within Teams. I think there's a recent change that Microsoft have made around the Ignite cloud storage, which is going to be coming soon as an additional ability to add on that cloud storage. So from me, that's kind of all for now. Hopefully that had been useful. I appreciate it's a little bit of a sort of whistle-stop tour of Teams, but hopefully that gives everybody on the webinar today a bit of a flavour around how to use Teams, how to get it set up quickly, and some best practice.
Brilliant. Thanks, Matt. Really appreciate that. I think my takeaways from that is, or a couple of them, Teams can become my all-embracing desktop. If I can load in my project management tool, my Twitter feed, internet pages, as well as doing all the comms and collabs that Teams does do, well, there's no need to come out of Teams at all as my environment. And likewise with the live event, with us all being in lockdown and work from home, or a lot of us being in that situation, live events is a great way of doing those town hall, quickly doing those town hall events that we've got on an end of week, end of month basis. So we've come to the end. Just want to do a little bit of a wrap up. We said we'd do some Q&A. I think we've got time for one, Matt, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
I got this one a little bit earlier, so here we go. So each individual department, so this is from the head of IT saying this, each individual department works well together using Teams, but they're becoming a little bit siloed, i.e. they're not communicating well with other departments. And if someone has a question for another department, how could I best use Teams to facilitate that?
Yeah, very good question. So I think when you start to look at setting up the different business functions, as I mentioned earlier on, i.e. you have your finance team, you have your marketing team, what I always say as a best practice is to probably set one up company-wide. So as an example with Microsoft, we have a general, what we call a general kind of team, where you really want to use that as not necessarily from a specific business function, but use it as more of a general to bring the actual business together. So whilst I said before, it's good practice to have business functions, what it's also really good to use to make sure that everybody still continues to have that business sense, and they're not just kind of siloed within their own teams, is to have a more general teams area. Okay,
thanks, Matt. Okay, just want to bring your attention to two other webinars we've got running in June, on the 23rd of June. So today's all been about productivity and driving that transformation at an individual and team level. On the 23rd, we'll be delving into how to secure Teams to make sure you can embrace it, but making sure at the same time you're protecting your business from those that want to steal your data, steal your IP, and equally accidentally share that to people that you shouldn't be sharing with. Then on the 30th, changing gears a little bit, we've got another 30-minute webinar, but this time it's on Windows Virtual Desktop. Now, in many cases, organizations are using Citrix, and it's got some huge plus points, but it comes at a premium price, and it doesn't support video particularly well. And we've seen the explosion of video conference calls, video calls, etc. And in this event, we'll look at how you could use WVD, Windows Virtual Desktop, as an alternative there. Okay, that's it. I hope you've got some good nuggets on how to improve your productivity using Teams. All the best. Have a lovely day. Stay safe. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.